you don't choose rugby, rugby chooses you. But I always thought that was funny. But I mean, in terms of if I was recruiting someone, just say rugby's a great sport in that it seems very physical, and it is, but there's actually way less injuries in it than in most other sports.
Hey, line for line, ain't no comp in this rap neither.
You waiting line for line and keep doing numbers. I gave them the game, trust we live for the summer. Got doctors and artists and athletic speakers. Come learn from my come up, I'm better than people. I'm in love with the grind, I'm in love with the culture. Do this for the fam, do this for Kenosha. You know I got you, Kenosha. If you got the vision, then come a little closer. Let's get it together, line for line with the soldiers. I'm in love with the grind, I'm in love with the culture. Do this for the fam, do this for...
All right. Welcome back to another very special episode of Line for Line Podcast. I'm your host with the most, Devon Booker. We have a very gracious young man in the building today. We have Mr. Todd Streeter in the building. Todd, how are you feeling today?
Very good. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to talking rugby.
Of course. How are you feeling this Saturday?
Not bad. Not bad at all. The weather's getting better, and that means rugby is going to be played soon.
I was about to say, that means rugby weather. But the most cliche thing we do when we start Line for Line Podcast, we have the guests come through. We have them tell the world just a little bit about them, their profession, things of that nature. The floor is now yours, sir.
I'm 47. I live in Racine. I work from home doing computer things. I have a 7 and a 5-year-old and a wife, and that's essentially where I'm at now. I don't know how much history you want, but
that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. We'll get to the history during the duration of this interview. But ladies and gentlemen, I met Todd Streeter when I was still a young lad. I was still in high school at the time, playing rugby for the Kenosha Vultures, and the coaches would have you come through and talk to us as well too. And you were telling us about all the things that rugby had to offer, whether it was going on to the next level playing at Parkside. You were teaching us about the Harlequins. You were teaching us about all the things that you were involved with when it came into rugby, and that helped us find a more deeper love for rugby. So we want to say we appreciate you for those times back then, young man.
Oh, thank you.
But a lot of people at home, they want to know, how did you get introduced to rugby, and what first drew you into rugby?
So I first got introduced to rugby in 1997 when I returned to Kenosha to go to UW Parkside for school. Mm-hmm. My freshman year, I had gone to Ohio for college. Had a little crazy year. Came back to Parkside, closer to home. And Dr. John Murphy had started a rugby team here. Restarted, I should say. There was a team at Parkside in the 70s, but he started a team in 1997. And I think it started in the spring, but I started in the fall. And I joined it. I bought cleats right away and a mouth guard. Mm-hmm. I was all in. I I didn't need to see if I'd like it. I thought I would like it. So that's how I was introduced to it, was the second semester they had restarted the team on campus with a local chiropractor. He's the one, and he had played in college, so he wanted to pass his love on to other people.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, when it comes to rugby, I know your story. I know the different hats you wore. When it comes to rugby, can you just tell the people at home, whether it was referee, coach, player, just tell us a little bit about the different hats that you wore when it comes to rugby?
Well, I was thinking about that. I've been a part of rugby for about 30 years, I realize, just about. And as a player, I've played for UW Parkside. I've played for the Gainesville Hogs. I lived in Gainesville in my late 30s and played for them for 5 or 6 years. As a coach, I've coached the University of Wisconsin Parkside team. Once I was done playing, I helped coach the University of Florida team, which was a great experience in Gainesville when we lived there. Mm-hmm. I've refereed in Wisconsin. I've refereed in Florida. And my hat I wear now, because I don't have a lot of free time to play and do those things, is I'm an administrator for the Great Midwest Rugby Conference, which is college teams pretty much through Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota a little bit. So I run a conference that kind of organizes that in the spring and the fall. So
Of course. Now that you told us that opens the door for my next question. Can you just tell us a little bit about your perspective change when you're on the pitch versus when you're on the sideline as a coach?
Well, when you're playing, I don't care how long you've been playing. If you don't get butterflies when the opening whistle blows, it's probably not for you anymore. But even when I was playing into age 40 as a player, I'd always get those butterflies. And within a minute or two, you just settle in and it's just a lot of fun. And sure, you're probably going to be sore for 2 or 3 days after, but it's physical. It's fun. It's you with your brothers competing. And I've never played another sport where at the end of it, win or lose, you just feel like I've earned it. I played, losing isn't fun, but losing at rugby was better than losing at almost anything else. I hate to say that. So, because it was such a fun sport. Being a coach, I was honestly a lot less nervous because I don't actually have a real hand in winning the game or losing the game. The players, I always believed in empowering the players to make decisions on the field. That's what rugby is. It's not a coach calling in plays every other sequence. It's training them up Monday through Friday so that on Saturday they're all smart little mini coaches in their head and stuff like that. So, being a coach was honestly a lot less nerve-wracking because you weren't the one actually competing. You wanted your team to win, but that was on them. That was if the team on the field wanted to win. But as a player, that was a fun experience too. So
now, as a coach and as a former player, can you just tell us a little bit about the difference between the two when it comes to football and rugby and just the physicality that one brings over the other?
Well, I played football in high school, and I can say pretty honestly that they're both very physical, but the difference is rugby, it's a lot more like wrestling and sports where people have to be mindful of their bodies. Football, you're wearing pads, you got armor, you think you're invincible, you got a helmet on. Well, you wouldn't think you could get a head injury, and yet I'm pretty sure I definitely was concussed in high school football, at least once or twice that I can recall. But yeah, rugby is really physical, but it doesn't pay to just bulk up and be super strong. You have to have the cardio of soccer players. So it's kind of a perfect blend of strength and speed. And so yeah, I don't know. Football came from rugby. That's why it's called a touchdown in rugby or in football. I'm sorry, because in rugby you have to touch the ball down physically in the end zone to score. So a lot of football comes from that. But yeah,
of course. Now rugby doesn't always get the national attention when it comes to the mainstream media. Why would you say that it is? It just doesn't get recognized as much as other sports?
Well, when you look at a lot of the major American sports, they've all been commercialized heavily. If there isn't a way to have corporate sponsorship come in, ways to offset those costs, then rugby does not allow for interruption. It's an hour. It's for 2 40-minute halves. You don't stop play. So a match starts and it ends in about an hour and a half. There's not a lot of way for commercial interest to kind of slow down the game when you go to a pro football game. It's a 4 hour endeavor now so I think it's kind of tough for rugby to be monetized in that way. So I think that's why it hasn't completely caught on. It's an Olympic sport though. So I think it is kind of growing, but the big American sports, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer to a certain degree, I mean, they all have a way that, corporate interests can come in and it can be sponsored and things like that. Rugby just doesn't really lend itself to that. So, it's tough. It's tough to bring in that money to kind of prop it up as a higher profile sport.
Of course. Now, what type of athlete would you say thrives the most when it comes to rugby?
I mean, that's the funny thing about rugby. It's really for all sizes. There's a subset of players that are forwards, which you and I were. Yeah. Those are bigger, stronger guys. You still need to have fitness and cardio though. And then you have the other subset of guys called the backs that are typically fast players that operate in the open field. So, I mean, really, there's nowhere to hide cardio wise. You got to be able to, still run around. But a perfect kind of blend of cardio, strength, a little bit of speed, like pure athleticism. That's like your perfect rugby player, that you can plug in almost anywhere.
Of course. Now, when it comes to sports, there's a forever change. Things are always changing. Can you just tell us a little bit about some of the changes you've seen since you first started to the changes that they have now in rugby?
In terms of the sport itself or the culture, rugby, I think what people think of with rugby is it's just a lot of people just, being crazy. A lot of people associate it with drinking beer, things like that. And thankfully, a lot of that happened probably before the cell phone age with cameras on everyone's phone. But, rugby is kind of, I think, raised its profile in terms of seriousness, and that, look, I mean, if you want to just get together and have beers with your friends, you can do that in any capacity. But we're here because we actually like the sport of rugby. And I think rugby has kind of done a good job of the sport itself of, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely like there's more high profile events now. There's more college opportunities with full scholarships and things like that, which that's how you're going to attract younger players is, I can get my school paid for, or something like that. There's a lot of professional opportunities now. The U.S. has a professional rugby league. So, you can actually play it as a job, in the United States. That wasn't a thing 20, 30 years ago. But yeah, and YouTube, things like that where, hey, if I'm a coach and I want to start a team, I can go to YouTube and look up drills, I mean, when you played, or definitely when I played, I mean, there was no online resource. In fact, you probably wanted to just watch a match. Yeah. That was tough to find online. And now there's Peacock shows the Six Nations, which is European rugby. So you can just turn it on your regular streaming shows now. And, it's great to see all the resources that are out there that if you want to do something with rugby, I mean, there's ways you can do it now, so.
Of course. Now, what would you say keeps you committed to a game that's kind of violent, kind of dangerous, I would say, and sometimes, like we were just talking about, doesn't really get the mainstream notoriety that other sports get?
Honestly, I think it's because rugby is it's one of the last pure team sports that I think still remains. Rugby really requires you and your teammates to work together for a common goal. There's very few individual stats. And the sport and the culture of it is a worldwide thing. I mean, so if you play, you play in the United States, or you go on vacation, you wear a rugby shirt, you're going to run into the only other rugby guy there. So while it may not have a high profile in terms of being like a pro sport or something like that, it's a culture that just, most of my professional jobs I've had out of college have come through indirect rugby relationships. So it changed my professional career because I played rugby, and many of my best friends to this day are rugby friends, and they weren't just from like a couple years when I played. They were from 30 years of being a part of rugby. I've made rugby friends, good friends that I've just met in the last couple years. So it's just a great fraternity. That side of it, I think, is what a lot of other sports might not have. So,
of course. Now, what would you say that players most often misunderstand about the officiator's role, like the referee's role?
I'm sorry. What
would you say that the players misunderstand about the referee's role? Like, what would be one thing that you would say?
Well, I think one thing about players is they like to yell out what they see happening if it's an infringement on something like that. And referees, one of the main things about referees is you don't want to blow the whistle any more than you have to. It's probably like the NBA or any other sport. People want to see the action. So I think one challenge for players against referees is referees have to determine what's material when there's penalties and infringements, and players want to yell, "Hey, did you see that? Did you do that? Did you see that?" And the referee is like, "Do you still have the ball? We don't need to worry about what they just did. You have the ball and you're attacking." And that, that's another thing that's fairly unique to rugby is you only have one captain. He's the only one that talks to the ref, and everyone else does not chirp at the ref, including the coach. So there's a high respect level for the referee, and like I said, they want it to flow, and that requires both teams to play in the spirit of the game. So.
Of course. What would you say has been a lesson that you've learned from rugby that you've carried over into your professional life?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I kind of had said it earlier, but rugby is the kind of thing where the end result isn't really necessarily the most important thing. When you play, you just want to make sure that at the end of the game, you have no energy left. Did you leave it all out there? You probably screwed up. You will screw up. That's for sure. But did you leave it all out there? Did you play really hard for your brothers? And you just kind of let the chips fall where they may. And that, I don't know, that's kind of how life is, I guess. Sure, we have our goals for how we want things to be and stuff like that. But the reality is you just got to give your best effort. You may have screwed up on one play, but then you collect yourself and you don't let it happen again, and you improve on it. leave it all out there, put in your best effort, and at the end, the result, it is what it is. But if you've left it all out there, I mean, you can't ask for anything more. So
of course. What might a conversation look like between you and someone that you're recruiting to play the game of rugby?
Well, as someone wise once said, you don't choose rugby, rugby chooses you. But that's I always thought that was funny. But I mean, in terms of if I was recruiting someone, just say rugby's a great sport in that it seems very physical, and it is, but there's actually way less injuries in it than in most other sports. You're not wearing any, so from that standpoint, you get the physicality that you want if you want that. But you don't have to worry about, catastrophic injuries. You have way more of those in sports where you're wearing the armor. But again, it's the whole package with rugby. You're going to make friends for the rest of your life. It's a great fraternity and sorority. You may have professional connections that end up changing your life. You may meet your spouse through rugby. It's really just a whole ecosystem into of itself, whereas other sports are you show up and you compete and that's it. And you go home. I don't know a lot of NFL players playing for little, recreational football teams in their 50s.
Yeah.
And rugby's got all kinds of 50-year-old players playing for their club teams till they can't play anymore, So it's a lifelong, it can be a lifelong thing depending on if you end up enjoying it. And it's not for everyone. Some people, I tried it for a year or two and it wasn't for me. And that's fine too, so.
Of course. Now, what would you say are some things that it takes to build a better rugby community that sticks and lasts when it comes to small cities like Kenosha or places beyond?
Sure. It all starts with the culture. Mm-hmm. There was a time, probably not just in rugby, but, hazing and guys paying their dues to become a part of the team. For any kind of sport. The reality is if you have a culture from the beginning that's welcoming to new players and players who don't know how to play, like rugby, a lot of people have never been exposed to it. Well, if you welcome them to the team and not, okay, new guys, you're going to do this, if it's a welcoming environment, the culture's good. And then the next step past that is good leadership and organization and or coaching. There's teams that are uncoached. So like a player with a lot of experience, he's the one coaching the team. Well, it's tough if he's also playing. So if you have the luxury of having a good leadership board, like a president and a social chair and a treasurer, as well as a coach, that gives you the foundation for, and you're a captain too. You need a captain who leads on the field. Ideally, not necessarily the president. You don't want one guy wearing too many hats. So, delegating the responsibilities, that's a good component of any successful team. Being welcoming to new players and just having a culture that the guys really do want to hang out and play with each other. They don't need to be best friends, but it can't be they just show up to practice, show up to a game, and then nobody ever hangs out outside of work. I mean, that usually doesn't foster a successful team down the road. So, the guys usually bleed together on the field, and then afterwards they want to go, socialize together too. And that's what I think makes the best kind of team is one that's, competes hard on the field and is with each other off the field too. So
Of course. Now, if there is one thing that you can add to boosting the visibility of rugby, what do you think it would be?
Increasing the visibility of rugby. Honestly, I think it starts with dedicating a lot more resources to a youth level. Mm-hmm. Flag football is becoming very big. Donald Driver was just down here at UW Parkside, has a women's flag football team now. They're doing a good job of raising their profile by just getting into, avenues that, younger people want to play. Youth rugby it's growing and it's co-ed and it's not physical because it's flag. Mm-hmm. So if we could get that more out there and we could get it into like public schools as a gym class, providing the curriculum to schools to say, hey, just here's a little 2-week thing on throwing around a rugby ball and stuff. You raise the profile and then it creates more opportunities. Past that, I think it's also having enough coaches that can coach at a youth level. Like you said, you played for the Vultures. It takes a lot of effort to keep that effort going and the right people to keep it going at a youth level, at a middle school, high school, college and senior levels down the road. But just increasing the profile at a youth level, I think, is how rugby can best increase its visibility moving forward.
Of course. Now, if there was a piece of advice that you could give to the community about making sure, like you said, we get this in schools and all that, what would be that piece of advice that you would give them to make them think of rugby as something that should be in schools and things of that nature?
Well, I would imagine that if there was some kind of free training, a free program, free curriculum that was provided, that would be well received. First of all, that's free. Here you go. This is how to just teach this for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. From that point on, I mean, we live in a world where CTE has become very well known. Mm-hmm. CTE, I don't think hasn't become a big problem in rugby because again, there's no helmets, there's no headgear, and rugby actually has done a real good job in the last 5 to 10 years of any tackles above the shoulders, like right here, is a penalty, major penalty. In fact, you'd probably be suspended for multiple weeks. So there's a lot less injury concern, as well as it's great men and women. Mm-hmm. I mean, women, the last Olympics, our women took bronze. They had an amazing effort. It's a sport that men and women, they play, equally. I mean, in the sense that it's the same field size and things like that, So men and women, and for women, it's now getting on the verge of becoming an NCAA sport. Mm-hmm. It's been an emerging sport under the acronym of NYRA for many years, and I think they have 40 to 45 teams now that are school sanctioned. So I mean, it's great for both genders to play and.
Of course. Now, as we get ready to close out this phenomenal episode, can you just tell us about your most memorable moment when it comes to playing rugby?
When it comes to playing rugby, mm-hmm. It's tough to remember all the things over the years. The one that's probably in my most recent memory is when we moved down to Gainesville. I had coached for a long time, and I had the opportunity to coach the Florida Gators one season, and then the other season of the year, I played for the Gainesville Hogs, which is the senior men's team in the area. And that was just a phenomenal team. We had a great coach. Her name was Carrie Chancellor. She was a very tough cookie and very smart. And there was just a lot of great players on that team. Most of them grad students at UF, like smart guys getting PhDs. But we had a very good team, and the first state championship that I was a part of with that team was really great. We beat Palm Beach, who was one of our rivals. We had lost to them earlier in the regular season, and we beat them in the championship. And it was just, I mean, I as a player, and I think at the time I was 36 or 37 on this team of a bunch of guys that it was a lot of fun. And, that was probably one of my fondest memories, at least in recent memory, as being a player. So,
of course. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here first on Line for Line podcast. I'm your host with the most, Devon Booker. That has been Mr. Todd Streeter. Todd, thank you for having some time for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You calling or you listening, tune in every week. Line for line. Oh yeah, I'm going line for line.